My Patreon member and friend has a terminal subclade of I-FT203465, which he shares with his father. This subclade originated in the United States. Now, his ancestor emigrated from Yorkshire, England, to Virginia in 1643 CE. And this ancestor can be associated with the family tree DNA subclade I-FT205981, which has an age estimate of around 1564 CE. There are possible family trees, though, that tie my friend's patrilineal line all the way back to around the year 1500 in Almonbury, Yorkshire, England. People such as my friend that have English ancestry and are positive for haplogroup I1 often want to know, did their patrilineal forefathers arrive to the region with the Anglo-Saxons or later on with the Vikings? In this video, I'm going to hopefully provide compelling evidence that the answer to that question for my friend's patrilineal line is the Viking Age. A new preprint was recently released titled Steppe Ancestry in Western Eurasia and the Spread of the Germanic Languages. In this preprint, there was a lot of interesting information regarding the origins of the Anglo-Saxons. To quote the preprint, quote, "Here we find almost all samples from England fall within the southern Scandinavian clusters, restricting the range from the Netherlands to Jutland," end quote. To further quote the preprint, quote, "We can now reject the Danish Isles and Sweden as a source area for the Anglo-Saxons in Britain," end quote. Based on the aforementioned information, if my friend's patrilineal forefathers were Anglo-Saxons, I would expect them to find some ancient DNA evidence in the areas shaded in the following map. But when I analyze my friend's subclades, going all the way back to the Bronze Age with subclade IS26361, I find zero ancient DNA evidence that can be associated with the Anglo-Saxons, both in continental Europe and in England itself during the early Middle Ages. In 2022, there was a very important study that was released titled The Anglo-Saxon Migration and the Formation of the Early English Gene Pool. Out of all the ancient DNA locations that you can see in the following image from that study, there were zero ancient DNA samples that can be associated with my friend's subclades, starting all the way back to the Bronze Age with IS26361. Let us now take a look at the ancient DNA evidence for these same subclades for my friend that can be associated with Viking Age Denmark. In the following map, the Danish island of Zeeland is also referred to as Zealand or Sealand, and the island of Finn is also referred to as Funen. So it depends on what language you are speaking. My friend's first ancient DNA connection comes from the 2020 study, Population Genomics of the Viking World. The ancient DNA sample is labeled Craig Have 532 in the family tree DNA database. He's also known as VK532. He lived sometime during the Roman Iron Age between 1 and 200 CE. He was discovered in Craighave Odif Tofter on the island of Sealand in Denmark. He connects to my friend through the Bronze Age subclade IS26361. The next ancient DNA connection also comes from the 2020 study, Population Genomics of the Viking World. This sample is labeled Tola 71 in the family tree DNA database. He's also known as VK71. He lived sometime between 700 and 1000 CE. He was discovered in Tola on the island of Sealand in Denmark. He connects to my friend through the late Bronze Age, early Iron Age subclade IS22349. The third ancient DNA connection comes from the 2024 study, Elevated Genetic Risk for Multiple Sclerosis Emerged in Steppe Pastoralist Populations. This sample also connects to my friend through the IS22349 subclade. This sample is labeled Algade835 in the family tree DNA database. He lived sometime between 1350 and 1400 CE. He was discovered in Holbæk on the island of Sealand in Denmark. The last ancient DNA connection also comes from the 2020 study, Population Genomics of the Viking World, and also connects to my friend through the IS22349 subclade. The sample is labeled Galgadil LS in the family tree DNA database. He's also referred to as VK446 in the study. He lived sometime between 800 and 1100 CE. He was discovered in Galgadil on the island of Funen in Denmark. This archaeological site was also mentioned in the 2014 research article, Galgadil, Isotopic Studies of a Viking Cemetery on the Danish island of Funen, AD 800 to 1050. You can see in the following map from that research article that the archaeological site of Galgadil is located in the north of Funen Island. Galgadil LS is grave labeled LS, which is in the far right-hand area of the middle blue region. So all four of my friend's closest ancient DNA connections come from the Danish islands. And I just want to reiterate what the recently released preprint wrote about this subject matter. Quote, "We can now reject the Danish Isles and Sweden as a source area for the Anglo-Saxons in Britain," end quote. Having four ancient DNA connections from the Danish islands and 0 ancient DNA connections from regions associated with the Anglo-Saxons leads me to conclude that my friend's patrilineal line entered England during the Viking Age. Now, even though my friend's closest ancient DNA connections come from the Danish islands of Sealand and Funen with the IS22349 subclade, his closest modern matches that connect to him prior to his genealogical timeframe subclade claim the countries of Sweden, Norway, and Poland for the earliest known patrilineal countries of origin with the IY21480 subclade. Now, there is over 2,000 years of missing subclade data prior to my friend's genealogical timeframe subclade. So any theory regarding his patrilineal line based on 2,000 years of missing data is going to be a bit speculative. But based on his modern matches and his ancient DNA connections, I think it's quite plausible that his patrilineal forefather could have came from any Scandinavian country during the Viking Age prior to arriving in northern England. The most likely entrance into northern England for his patrilineal forefathers would have been with the Great Heathen Army in the year 865 CE. Yorkshire, England, where my friend's patrilineal forefathers came from prior to the USA, had a strong Viking influence during the Viking Age. People from all over Scandinavia settled there, and the territory was ruled by Viking kings for several generations, such as the famous Eric Blood Axe from Norway. Could this be why the IY21480 subclade has 2 out of 3 child branches, with modern testers claiming Norway for their earliest known patrilineal country of origin? Impossible to know whether or not my Patreon member has any patrilineal ties to the famous Eric Blood Axe, but still tantalizing to think about. There might even be a Norman connection for my friend's patrilineal line. He has a very unique surname that might be a derivative of a Norman word. Furthermore, the town of Almonbury in Yorkshire, England, where my friend's patrilineal forefathers might have originated from in the early 1500s, has Norman connections. According to Wikipedia, in regards to the village of Almondbury, Almondbury appears in the Domesday Book as Almondbury. After the Norman conquest, the land around the village was held by the powerful de Lacy family, who gave their name to de Lacy Avenue. So could my friend be related to the powerful Norman de Lacy family, or some other Norman associated with the family that accompanied them to that region of England? It's impossible to know based on the current data, but still interesting to think about. As I mentioned in the beginning of this video, my friend's patrilineal ancestor immigrated to Virginia in the year 1643, and he is the patriarch of a large patrilineal descendancy in the United States. And all of my friend's subclade matches that have tested positive for that subclade, I-FT205981, and its descendant subclades such as IBY156203, IA21848, and I-FT203465, all originated in the United States and descend from this one man. And there are a couple individuals that have a different surname than my friend, but these are most certainly non-paternal event surname changes. The authentic original surname for this patrilineal line is my friend's surname. What more can we learn from my friend's STR data? Well, all of his Y111 and Y67 STR matches descend from this one immigrant to the United States in 1643, except for one Y111 match who has the largest genetic distance of 5 with my friend, and he descends from a patrilineal line that emigrated to Australia from England, but he also has the same surname as my friend. Unfortunately, this individual passed away, so we are unable to upgrade him to Big Y700. Unfortunately, my friend, for his first 37 STRs, has a lack of divergence with other testers that connect to him with farther upstream branches such as IS22349. So there are no promising leads to split up that large 2,000-year time gap between his IY21480 branch and his genealogical timeframe branch I-FT205981. Thanks for watching.